I was driving toward my daughter's place for dinner, expecting nothing more than our usual comfortable family night, when my phone vibrated with a message that instantly tightened my chest. It was from my attorney. "Call me immediately. Urgent." The words alone were enough to make my pulse jump. I called him without hesitation, and within seconds my entire world tilted. Just minutes earlier, I had been calmly reviewing quarterly performance reports at my desk when my phone lit up again. This time, the caller identification showed Daniel Harper, my lawyer of nearly 3 decades. Under his name were the words, "Emergency concerning your daughter." My pen slipped from my hand and clattered across the desk. In 30 years of building North Star Dynamics, Daniel had never once labeled anything involving my family as an emergency. I called before the screen dimmed. His voice was sharp and controlled, the tone he used only when something was truly wrong. "I need to warn you immediately," he said. "Your daughter has filed a legal action. She is asking the court to declare you mentally unfit to continue leading North Star Dynamics." The words slammed into me like freezing water. "What are you talking about?" I said. "That is impossible. She is my daughter. She is not acting alone," Daniel continued. "She has aligned herself with several shareholders. They are claiming you are no longer capable of making sound decisions due to emotional instability." My legs gave out, and I dropped into the leather chair by my desk. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the Chicago skyline blurred into gray streaks. I had watched that skyline for decades while building this company brick by brick, always believing I was building it for her future. "How much time do we have?" I asked. "There is a preliminary hearing in 7 days," he said. "We have to move immediately." 7 days. My mouth went dry. "She has been preparing this for months," Daniel added. "The documentation is extensive. Financial records that they claim show erratic leadership. Statements from board meetings. Carefully selected examples designed to undermine you." I stood and began pacing between my desk and the window. Rain slid down the glass in uneven lines, like tears I refused to let fall. "What statements?" I asked. "Allegations of emotional outbursts. Claims of questionable strategic decisions. They are presenting you as someone who has lost control." "That is ridiculous," I said sharply. Yet even as the words left my mouth, a thin thread of doubt crept in. Had I argued too forcefully in recent meetings? Had I defended long-term strategies with too much passion? "I know it sounds absurd," Daniel replied, "but they have paperwork. A lot of it." I looked around my office. Industry awards lined the walls. Framed photos from groundbreaking ceremonies. Decades of proof, suddenly fragile. All of it meant nothing if my own child could take it away with a signature. "Who else knows?" I asked. "The filing is sealed for now," he said. "But the shareholders she has recruited, Mark Ellis, Rebecca Sloan, and 3 others, are meeting tomorrow." I clenched the phone until my fingers ached. "She promised them higher dividends under new leadership," Daniel continued. "Her leadership." The betrayal cut deeper than any business loss I had ever suffered. Lena, my brilliant and driven daughter, the one I had been preparing for years to eventually lead this company, just not like this. Never like this. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Everything," he said. "Financial records. Medical documentation. Proof of your competence. Character witnesses. We are building a defense from the ground up in 7 days." I closed my eyes. 48 hours earlier, I had been planning to quietly tell her that I intended to name her chief executive officer within the year. Now she was trying to erase me. "Are you still with me?" Daniel asked. I am here, I said, though my voice sounded unfamiliar even to me. Schedule whatever you need. I will clear my calendar. Good, he replied. And do not confront her yet. We need to understand their full strategy first. After the call ended, I sat alone as dusk swallowed the office. The city lights came alive below, but the warmth had drained from the room. From my life. I gathered my belongings automatically: coat, briefcase, keys, going through the same motions I had followed for 30 years. Except now, nothing was the same. The elevator descended in silence. 50 floors down, my legs felt weak. In the parking garage, I sat in my car with my hands resting on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead for nearly 10 minutes, trying to understand how everything had unraveled so quickly. Lena was expecting me for dinner. It was our standing weekly tradition. I wondered if I should go at all. Should I sit across from her and pretend nothing had happened, smiling politely while she planned my professional execution? And yet, a part of me needed to see her. To look at her face. To understand who my daughter had become. I started the engine and merged into evening traffic, heading toward Oak Brook, toward answers I was not sure I wanted. Her front door opened before I could knock. Lena stood there in a cream-colored sweater, her smile perfectly measured. "Dad, right on time," she said, stepping forward. Her hug felt practiced. "Come in. It is freezing out there." I searched her face for cracks. I found none. "Emily has been asking about Grandpa all day," she added as she led me inside. "She drew you another picture." The house smelled like roasted chicken and dishonesty. I followed her into the open kitchen, where Nathan, her husband, was setting the table. He looked up with a nervous brightness. "Good to see you," he said, gripping my hand a little too long. "Can I get you something to drink? Wine? Or something stronger?" "Wine is fine," I replied. I watched Lena move around the kitchen with calm precision, the same controlled efficiency she displayed in board meetings. Emily burst into the room wearing paint-splattered overalls. "Grandpa!" I lifted her without effort, grateful for something real in a house built on pretense. "What is this I hear about a picture?" I asked. "It is us at your office," she said, shoving a crayon drawing into my hands. "That is you at your big desk. And that is me spinning in the chair." The stick figures were drawn in the familiar blue and silver colors of North Star Dynamics. Innocent. Trusting. Everything her mother was not. "It is beautiful," I said, kissing her forehead. I noticed Lena watching us. Something passed over her face: guilt, calculation, or maybe both. "Emily, wash your hands for dinner," Nathan said, his voice overly cheerful. Lena moved between the stove and the counter. "Dad, you look tired," she said casually. "Maybe you should be resting more." The question was loaded. I met her eyes. "Work keeps me sharp," I replied. "By the way, how are things going in the finance department?" She froze, wooden spoon suspended halfway to her mouth. "Let us not talk about work during dinner," she said flatly. "Since when?" I asked lightly. "You usually enjoy discussing quarterly projections." "Not tonight," she said, turning back to the stove. "Family time should be sacred." Sacred, I thought, the way loyalty used to be. Nathan cleared his throat. "Emily drew that picture during our time today. She has been talking about visiting the office again. Maybe next week," I said, silently wondering if I would still have an office by then. Emily climbed into her booster seat. "Grandpa, can you tell the story about the first computer?" "Which story?" I asked. "The one where you built the company in the garage." I glanced at Lena. She was slicing chicken with surgical focus. That was before your mommy was born, I said. We had nothing but ideas and determination. And Grandma Ruth helped, Emily added. The knife stopped mid-cut. Lena's shoulders tightened. Yes, I said quietly. Grandma Ruth helped with everything. Silence stretched across the kitchen. Nathan filled it by turning on soft classical music. Dinner continued under a thin layer of forced normalcy. Emily talked excitedly about preschool. Nathan described his latest architectural project. Lena asked polite questions about my sleep, my appetite, my health. Every question felt like surveillance. The chicken is excellent, I said, forcing warmth into my voice. It is Mom's recipe, Lena replied, and there was a sharp edge beneath the words. She always said cooking was about love, not perfection. It was another carefully placed remark. Ruth used to say that when she was gently trying to pull me away from my office and back into our home. She had been wise about many things. I nodded slowly. Yes, I said. She was. Lena's fork tapped once against her plate. She understood priorities. The unspoken accusation hovered between us. Emily looked from me to her mother, her small face tightening as she sensed something she could not name. Grandpa, she asked softly, why do you look sad? Straight truth, delivered without mercy. I am not sad, sweetheart, I said. I am just thinking. About what? About how much these family dinners mean to me. Lena's eyes met mine across the table. For a split second, I saw the little girl who used to sit by the front window, waiting for my car lights to appear at night. Then the moment vanished. More wine? Nathan asked quickly, already lifting the bottle. The evening dragged forward inch by inch. Dessert appeared. Coffee followed. Emily showed me new drawings, proudly narrating every detail. Normal rituals, carefully staged, concealing an extraordinary betrayal. At 8:15, I stood and slipped on my coat. Thank you for dinner, I said evenly. As always, it was perfect. Lena walked me to the door. Dad, are you sure you are okay? You seem different tonight. I studied her face. The concern looked real. Maybe it was. Maybe she had convinced herself this was all for my benefit. I am fine, I said gently. Just thinking about how much North Star Dynamics means to me. To our family. Something shifted in her expression. A wall sliding into place. Drive safely, she said. The roads are slick tonight. I kissed her cheek. She neither leaned in nor pulled away. Good night, Lena. Good night, Dad. The door closed with a soft click. I stood on her front steps as the rain started again. Through the window, I could see her clearing dishes with calm efficiency, every movement precise. Planning. Calculating. I drove aimlessly for a while, then parked near the Chicago River, city lights shimmering across the dark water. My hands trembled as I called Daniel again. How did dinner go? He asked. Like a stage performance, I said. She knows exactly how to look concerned while driving a knife between my ribs. Rain hammered against the windshield. Tell me everything, he said. She has been building this for at least 6 months. Daniel continued. She has documentation of what she calls emotional outbursts during meetings. What outbursts? I snapped. I have always been in control. The Anderson acquisition meeting, he said. When you rejected their low offer. Apparently you raised your voice. She recorded it as irrational anger that endangered company relationships. I remembered the meeting clearly. I had been passionate, not unhinged. There was a difference. What else? I asked. financial decisions, he said. She has labeled them sentiment over strategy. The charitable partnership with Ruth's Foundation. The employee retention initiative. Choices that reduce short-term profits. My throat tightened. Those were the right decisions. I know, Daniel said. But she is reframing them as emotional reactions instead of rational business logic. I started the car, needing motion. What is her timeline? The hearing is next Friday, he said. If she succeeds, she gains temporary control while you undergo a psychological evaluation. And if I refuse? The shareholders can vote you out anyway. She has enough support. I drove through nearly empty streets, the scale of her betrayal settling heavily on my chest. She was not just attacking me. She was dismantling everything I had built, piece by piece. At home, I went straight to my study. 30 years of my life stared back at me from the walls, awards, photographs, remnants of success. I opened the safe and removed Ruth's letters, the ones she had written during her final months. We need your attention more than the company does. She thinks you do not love her. I had dismissed Ruth's worries then. Lena was capable, accomplished, independent. How could she ever doubt my love? Apparently, doubt had grown into something poisonous. I pulled out a folder labeled Lena, personal. School records. Report cards. Photographs from company events where she stood beside me, eyes bright with pride. When had that pride turned into resentment? My computer chimed. An encrypted email from Daniel appeared, loaded with attachments. Legal filings. Lena's formal complaint. Dense pages of accusations and suggested medical conclusions. Subject displays increasing emotional volatility and attachment to outdated business practices. Refusal to adopt modern corporate strategies suggests diminished cognitive flexibility consistent with early-stage dementia or depression following spousal loss. Depression following spousal loss. They were weaponizing Ruth's death. I poured a generous measure of scotch and kept reading. Character witnesses prepared to testify about my declining judgment. Financial analysts ready to argue that my decisions were emotionally motivated. Medical professionals positioned to recommend compassionate intervention. It was a complete dismantling of my character, wrapped neatly in concern for my well-being. The precision of it was both impressive and devastating. At 1 a.m, I closed the laptop and sat in darkness. Rain whispered against the windows. The house felt cavernous. Ruth's photograph watched me from the desk. She had seen this coming. She had tried to stop it. She does not understand why you love the company more than her. But I had not loved the company more. I had built it for her. For our future. Every late night. Every missed dinner. Every sacrifice had been an act of devotion expressed in the only language I knew. Somehow, I had failed to make that clear. Now Lena was speaking a different language entirely, the language of corporate warfare, and she spoke it fluently. I opened my phone and began typing. Names of allies. Possible strategies. Ways to demonstrate my competence while dismantling her case piece by piece. If Lena wanted a war, she would have one. But she had underestimated her opponent. I had not built North Star Dynamics by yielding to pressure. I had built it by thinking faster and further ahead than anyone else. Dawn was still hours away, but something solid began to form beneath the hurt and anger. Purpose. Strategy. My daughter had declared war on everything I was. It was time to remind her who taught her how to fight. The next morning, the elevator rose steadily towards Steve Wilson's floor. I adjusted the briefcase under my arm, packed with documents and evidence I had already begun assembling. Steve's corner office sat 3 floors below mine. Same view of the river. Entirely different philosophy. His assistant looked up and smiled. He is expecting you, Mr. Carter. Steve glanced up from a stack of financial projections, reading glasses balanced on his nose. I saw 60 years of friendship in Steve's familiar blue eyes the moment he looked up. Perfect timing, he said. I was just reviewing. We need to talk. I cut in. I set my briefcase down on his conference table with a deliberate, heavy thud. The sound alone changed the room. Close the door. Something in my voice made him move without another word. The door clicked shut. What is going on? He asked. Lena is trying to have me legally declared incompetent. Steve's face shifted rapidly, confusion, disbelief, then concern, all within a heartbeat. That cannot be true. I opened the briefcase. Legal documents spread across the polished wood like battlefield maps. She filed the lawsuit 2 weeks ago, I said. She is seeking temporary control of North Star Dynamics while I am forced to undergo a psychological evaluation. Steve lowered himself into his chair slowly. Why did you not tell me sooner? I needed to understand how big this was first. I slid a color-coded shareholder analysis toward him. Look. The document laid out our investor base like a military campaign. Green for loyal. Yellow for undecided. Red for those Lena had already turned. There was too much red. Mark Ellis is already committed, I said. So is Rebecca Sloan. 3 others are leaning her way. Steve studied the names carefully. She promised Ellis a 15% dividend increase, he said. Based on what? Staff cuts, I replied. Automation. Artificial intelligence replacing support teams. Something cold settled in my chest. That would gut the culture we built over 30 years, I said. But younger shareholders do not care about culture. They only see numbers. Steve nodded. As a co-founder, he had access to internal communication channels. What he had been monitoring confirmed everything. She has been methodical, he said. Each shareholder got a tailored pitch. Ellis received profit projections. Sloan got efficiency models. Others were fed modernization speeches. She is selling them a fantasy, I said. A profitable-looking fantasy, Steve replied. He pulled up email chains on his computer and turned the screen toward me. The revenue forecasts Lena had been circulating were aggressive to the point of delusion. They relied on terminating half of our senior staff and fully automating customer service. This is not innovation, I said flatly. This is corporate vandalism. Try explaining that to shareholders watching technology stocks skyrocket, Steve said. I spread our actual financial reports across the table. 3 years of steady growth, I said. 12% annually. 94% employee retention. Industry-leading customer satisfaction. Steve nodded. And she is promising 25% growth through what she calls strategic restructuring. The phrase turned my stomach. Strategic restructuring, I repeated. That is what they call destroying lives. Steve leaned back. Ellis might not be fully lost. He respects stability. He is just afraid of missing the next big wave. Then we remind him what happens to companies that chase every trend, I said. I pulled out another folder labeled Competitive Analysis. Every firm that followed Lena's preferred strategy, I said. Most collapsed within 5 years. TechFlow Industries, Steve said grimly. They automated everything, I replied. Their stock tripled. Then customer service imploded. They are worth 20% of their peak now. For the next hour, we mapped strategy. Who could still be persuaded? What evidence would matter to them? How to present strength instead of panic. Outside, the rain intensified. February in Chicago brought relentless gray skies. Perfect weather for corporate warfare. There is one more thing, Steve said quietly. Her attorney. Daniel mentioned it, I said. Who is it? Marianne Cole. Daniel had already briefed me on her. She is aggressive, Steve continued. She turns courtrooms into theater. Then we give her a better show, I said. Steve's computer chimed with a calendar alert. Board meeting next week, he said. Routine quarterly review. That is where she plans to strike, I said. Unless we move first. I closed the briefcase but left the documents spread across his table, a visual declaration of war. Set up a meeting with Ellis, I said. This week. Private lunch. What is your angle? Fear, I said. Show him what happens to investors who bet against proven leadership. Steve was already dialing. Thursday works. Morton's downtown. Perfect, I said. Neutral ground. As the afternoon light faded, something fundamental shifted. In 2 hours I had gone from target to strategist. Lena wanted a war. She would have won. But she had underestimated her opponent. I had not built North Star dynamics by yielding to stronger forces. I had built it by outthinking them. Daniel Harper's law office occupied the 20th floor of the Columbia Center, all dark wood and leather-bound authority. I arrived 10 minutes early, briefcase heavy with everything Steve had uncovered. The receptionist offered coffee. I accepted. This was going to be a long morning. Mr. Carter, Daniel said, appearing in the doorway of his office. Ready for battle? His conference room had been transformed into a command center. Lena's lawsuit documents covered one wall. My defense materials filled the opposite side. Between them was empty space, waiting to be claimed. Show me everything, I said. Daniel lifted a thick folder. Her official filing. 47 pages. I flipped through surgical character assassination. Every moment I had defended company values reframed as emotional instability. Every calculated risk recast as declining judgment. She claims you have lost touch with market reality, Daniel said. Our profits grew 12% last year, I replied. She argues that growth was driven by her initiatives, not yours. Classic, I said. Rewrite history and cast herself as the hero. What about her evidence? I asked. Daniel pulled out another stack. 6 months of documentation. Meetings where you allegedly showed inappropriate emotional responses. Financial decisions labeled sentiment over strategy. The Anderson acquisition. The charity partnership with Ruth's Foundation. The employee retention program. All long-term profitable decisions, I said. All reframed as weakness. And her legal representation, Daniel added. His expression darkened. Marianne Cole, he said. 38 wins out of 42 competency hearings. Family business disputes are her specialty. So she knows how to make devoted fathers look like failing patriarchs. I said. I studied Cole's photograph on Daniel's screen. Sharp features. Calculated smile. A woman who had built a career dismantling family legacies. She turns court sessions into theater, Daniel said. Then we write a better script, I replied. He laid out our counter-strategy. Character witnesses. Financial proof. Medical evaluations demonstrating mental acuity. I have scheduled cognitive assessments with 3 independent physicians, he said. Full physicals. Psychological evaluations. Blood work. Overkill, I said. Necessary, Daniel replied. Cole will attack from every angle. The irony was bitter. At 62, I was sharper than most executives half my age. And I intended to prove it. But Lena had turned my grief over Ruth's death into a weapon. Her legal filing framed it as delayed trauma, emotional decline following spousal loss, expressed through impaired judgment and increasing volatility. Using Ruth's memory against me was a level of calculation that left me momentarily breathless. What is our counter? I asked. Daniel smiled for the first time that morning. Not warmly, but with purpose. We turn her greatest strength into her weakness. He spread out our own evidence across the table. Lena's private promises to shareholders. Aggressive, unrealistic financial projections. Email chains documenting a 6-month campaign of calculated deception. We file a countersuit, he said. For what? I asked. Breach of fiduciary duty. Conspiracy to defraud shareholders. An intentional infliction of emotional distress. The last charge was personal, and we both knew it. Will it hold? I asked. It forces her onto defense instead of offense, Daniel replied. She will have to explain her actions under oath. He slid a formal document toward me. 23 pages of accusations, carefully wrapped in corporate language. She is going to be furious, I said. Good, Daniel replied calmly. Angry people make mistakes. I signed without hesitation. My hands were steady now. No shaking. No doubt. Only resolve. When do we file? Today, he said. Cole will have it by 5 o'clock. Outside, the rain had slowed to a cold mist. Late winter in Chicago was relentless. Perfect conditions for legal warfare. One more thing, Daniel added. The hearing date has been set. When? March 15th. 3 weeks. I did the math instantly. Enough time to prepare witnesses. Enough time to move, if we were aggressive. A knock interrupted us. Excuse me, Daniel's assistant said. Mr. Wilson is here for the 11:30. Steve entered carrying his own briefcase, his expression set. The alliance was solidifying. Gentlemen, he said, ready to save our company. The three of us stood around the conference table, staring down evidence of betrayal laid across polished mahogany. Lena wanted to play legal games, I said quietly. Now she gets to learn the rules. Outside, the skyline disappeared into gray haze. Inside that room, everything sharpened. War had been declared. Lines had been drawn. It was time to remind my daughter who taught her how to fight. I arrived 15 minutes early, choosing a table by the window overlooking the controlled chaos of the downtown market plaza. Early March in Chicago carried the promise of spring without the warmth. Vendors were already setting up, early flowers splashed with color beneath low clouds. The coffee was bitter. Fitting. Lena arrived exactly at 2:15. She wore a charcoal business suit, precise and armored. Before approaching, she scanned the space, exits, sight lines, witnesses. Dad, she said, sitting across from me, maintaining distance. Thank you for coming. Your message said this was important. I studied her face. She looked tired. Thinner than at our last dinner. Carrying deception took its toll, even on someone as disciplined as she was. How is Emily? I asked. She is fine, Lena replied. She asks about you. The words were sharp beneath the surface. I was the absent grandfather. The work-obsessed father. The man who chose business over family. And Nathan? I asked. Busy with his projects, she said evenly. We circled the truth like trained fighters. Lena, I said finally, why did you not come to me directly? Something flickered across her face. Surprise. Then control snapped back into place. About what? She asked, still holding the line. Impressive. About your concerns, I said. Your plans. Your vision for the company. When I tried, she said, you were always too busy running it. There it was. The core of everything. I built this for you, I said. She laughed, sharp and bitter. No, Dad. You built it for yourself. I was just part of the scenery. The words struck with physical force. That is not true, I said. She leaned forward, anger breaking through her composure. Every family dinner interrupted by work calls. Every vacation shortened for meetings. Every school performance you missed because of board presentations. Memories surged. Ruth's disappointed looks. Lena's quiet acceptance when I missed her college graduation ceremony. I was providing for our family, I said. You were feeding your ego. She shot back. Silence stretched between us. Outside, vendors called prices. Ordinary life continued while we dismantled 35 years of unspoken resentment. I want to modernize the company, she said. But you block everything I propose. I want to preserve what works, I replied. What works? Her voice rose slightly. Dad, we are falling behind. Technology companies are passing us. Our systems are outdated. Our methods are antiquated. Our methods build something lasting, I said. Something dying, she countered. She pulled out her phone and showed me charts and projections painting North Star dynamics as a relic waiting for extinction. Automation could raise efficiency 40%, she said. Artificial intelligence could cut operating costs in half. Remote work could expand talent globally and eliminate half our workforce, I said. Some roles would be restructured, she replied. Destroyed, I corrected. You are talking about destroying lives. Families. People who gave us decades of loyalty. Her jaw tightened. Business is not about loyalty, she said. It is about results. When did you become so cold? I asked. When I learned sentiment does not pay dividends, she replied. The words cut deep. This was not my daughter speaking. This was someone else. Who taught you that? I asked quietly. You did, she said, meeting my eyes. Every time you chose the company over us. Every time you showed success mattered more than people. Something inside my chest fractured. Not anger. Not betrayal. Understanding. I never meant. You never meant a lot of things, she said, gathering her phone and purse. But intentions do not change outcomes. Lena, wait. She stood, looking down at me with Ruth's eyes in a stranger's face. I am not the little girl waiting by the window anymore, she said. I do not need your approval. I do not need your permission. And I do not need your company. But you want it, I said. I want to save it from you, she replied. She turned and walked away, heels striking hardwood with finality. At the exit, she paused once. Give Emily my love. Then she was gone, absorbed into the crowd. I sat alone with cold coffee and colder clarity. My daughter was not just taking my company. She was collecting payment for 35 years of perceived abandonment. And maybe, just maybe, she was not wrong. The courthouse steps were slick with morning rain. I climbed them carefully, briefcase heavy, watching Lena's legal team arrange themselves with predatory precision. At their center stood Marianne Cole, her tailored suit sharp against the gray sky. Lena wore navy blue. Conservative. Controlled. Prepared. The image was clear and carefully constructed, the devoted daughter protecting family assets from a declining patriarch. Lena never once met my eyes. Inside the courtroom, a low current of energy buzzed through the air. Shareholders filled the gallery, their expressions tight and calculating. Business reporters lined the back rows, notebooks ready, drawn to the spectacle of family warfare disguised as corporate governance. Daniel touched my arm lightly. "Remember," he murmured. "Stay calm. Answer precisely." Judge Robert Harrison called the court to order. He was nearly 70, silver-haired, and known for running a courtroom with zero tolerance for theatrics. "Case number 2025-347, he announced. "Carter vs. Northstar Dynamics Incorporated." Marianne Cole rose smoothly from her seat, moving like a striking serpent. "Your Honor," she began, her voice polished and soothing. "This case concerns an aging executive whose judgment has been compromised by unresolved grief and inflexible thinking." She paced slowly, gesturing with controlled elegance. It was performance art disguised as legal argument. "Mr. Carter has lost the capacity to make rational decisions," she continued. "His emotional attachment to outdated business practices now threatens shareholder value and employee security." The courtroom screens lit up with charts, transcripts, timelines, financial projections, selectively edited meeting minutes. 6 months of carefully curated material. "The plaintiff," Cole said, turning slightly toward Lena, "seeks temporary guardianship to protect the company her father built from his own declining capabilities." Her words flowed like honey-coated poison. Calm. Persuasive. Lethal. Then Lena took the witness stand. "My daughter. My brilliant, driven daughter. Sworn under oath to dismantle me." "Ms. Carter," Cole said gently, "please describe your father's recent behavior." "My father makes decisions based on emotion rather than business logic," Lena replied, her voice steady. "He prioritizes personal sentiment over financial data." "Can you provide examples?" "The charitable partnership with my mother's foundation," she said. "It costs the company $200,000 annually with no measurable return. When I suggested reallocating those funds, he became agitated." Agitated. Ruth's memory reduced to a spreadsheet entry. "And what about strategic planning?" Cole asked. "He refuses to consider automation or artificial intelligence integration," Lena said. "He claims it would destroy company culture, while our competitors gain market share through technological advancement." Cole nodded sympathetically. "How has this affected company performance?" "We are stagnating," Lena said. "Growth has slowed. Efficiency metrics lag behind industry benchmarks." It was a lie, wrapped in half-truths. Our growth was steady and sustainable. Our employees stayed because we treated them like people, not disposable assets. "In your professional opinion," Cole asked, "what does the company need?" "New leadership," Lena said. "Modern strategy. A focus on profitability rather than sentiment." Each word landed like a physical blow. This was not my daughter speaking. Daniel's cross-examination cut through the performance like a scalpel. "Ms. Carter," he said calmly, "what was Northstar Dynamics' profit margin last quarter?" 12%. "And the quarter before?" 11.7%. "So under your father's allegedly incompetent leadership," Daniel said evenly, "profits are increasing. Short-term gains do not guarantee long-term viability," she replied. "What about employee retention?" he asked. 94% annually," And the industry average? She hesitated. 67%. So, Daniel continued, your father maintains higher employee satisfaction than industry norms while increasing profitability. Retention can also indicate resistance to necessary change, she said. Daniel smiled thinly. Or exceptional leadership, Cole objected. The judge sustained it, but the damage had already been done. Next came Mark Ellis, direct and profit-obsessed. We need leadership that prioritizes shareholder value, he testified. Ms. Carter understands modern business realities. By the time the morning session adjourned, exhaustion pressed down on me like weight. Watching your child publicly dismantle your competence required a strength I had never needed before. Daniel squeezed my shoulder as we stood. Phase 1 is complete, he said quietly. Tomorrow, we counter. Outside, spring rain continued to fall. Lena walked past me without acknowledgement, surrounded by her legal team. My little girl, who once waited by the window for her father to come home. Now she could not wait for me to vanish. That afternoon, my assistant knocked softly on my office door. Mr. Carter, Sarah said, her face tight. There is something you need to see. She placed a folder on my desk labeled Employee Communications, Confidential. Lena has been holding private meetings, she said, promising compensation increases that would bankrupt the company. I opened the folder. Transcripts. Email threads. 6 weeks of secret discussions with key staff. 20% salary increases for engineering. 30% for department heads. Stock options that did not exist. Where did you get this? I asked. People talk, Sarah said quietly. Especially when promises sound too good to be true. Steve arrived while I was still reading, his expression matching hers. We have a problem, he said. He dropped his own briefcase onto the table. She is approaching new shareholders, pension funds, investment groups, painting you as an obstacle to explosive growth. He laid out printed emails. She is promising employees massive raises, he said. Based on what? Automation savings that do not mathematically exist. I ran the numbers again in my head. Even full automation would not come close to funding what she was offering. She is committing fraud, I said flatly. It gets worse, Steve replied, opening his laptop. A photograph appeared on the screen. Marianne Cole, professional headshot attached to a news article. Cole was sanctioned by the state bar 2 years ago, Steve said. Witness coaching in a similar competency case. Temporary suspension. My phone rang. Daniel. I have evidence that Marianne Cole violated ethical standards, he said immediately. What kind of evidence? She coached Lena's testimony, he said. Provided exact language. Guided phrasing. That is witness tampering. The pieces snapped together. Lena's flawless performance had not been confidence. It had been rehearsed. And there is more, Daniel added. I uncovered financial irregularities in Lena's account management. The war had just shifted. And for the first time, the ground beneath my daughter's case began to crack. What kind of irregularities? I asked. Lena transferred funds between corporate accounts without your authorization, Daniel said. 3 separate transactions. Total amount, $847,000. The number hit me like ice water. For what purpose? Legal fees. Consultant payments. Operational expenses tied directly to her takeover effort. I looked at Steve. His face told me he was processing the same shock. That is embezzlement, he said flatly. Legally, it is unauthorized use of corporate funds, Daniel replied. But yes, it is criminal conduct. Steve leaned forward. This does not just change the direction of the case. It could end it, I said quietly. The irony tasted bitter. My daughter had tried to prove my incompetence by exposing her own recklessness. I walked to the window and looked out over Chicago's skyline. This city was where I had built everything. Where Ruth had lived. Where she had died. Where our family had once been whole. How do we present this? I asked. Carefully, Daniel said. We do not look vengeful. We look competent. Controlled. And Cole's ethics violations? I am filing a formal complaint with the Bar Association, he said. At the same time, we will present the evidence directly to the judge. Steve was already organizing documents across my conference table. Bank records. Internal emails. Employee communications. A 6-month trail of deception. The timing matters, I said. The next hearing is Monday. They will expect us to defend again, Steve said. Instead, I replied, we go on offense. I looked at the evidence spread across my office. 30 years of building a company, nearly undone by 6 months of lies. Lies always surfaced eventually. Schedule the character witnesses, I said. I want them ready for aggressive cross-examination. Steve nodded. Already done. Patricia Gomez from accounting. Daniel Brooks from engineering. They will testify to your competence and her manipulation. What about the employees she made promises to? Confused, Steve said. They trusted her, but the math does not work. Late afternoon sunlight cut through my windows. April in Chicago could be beautiful when the rain finally relented. I am heading home early, I said. We finalize our presentation tonight. Steve gathered his files. We have enough firepower to sink a battleship. Let us just make sure we aim correctly, I replied. After they left, I sat alone in the quiet. It no longer felt empty. It felt focused. Tomorrow we would remind everyone who built North Star Dynamics, and why it deserved better than my daughter's ambition. The courthouse felt different this time. Tension snapped through the air as everyone took their seats. Lena sat beside Marianne Cole, confident from their earlier performance. They did not yet know what was coming. Judge Harrison called the court to order. Mr. Harper, he said, you may present additional evidence. Daniel rose slowly. Calm. Deliberate. Like a predator that had found weakness. Your Honor, he said, we have uncovered unauthorized financial activity conducted by the plaintiff. Cole sprang to her feet. Objection. This is outside the scope. Overruled. Judge Harrison said. Proceed. Daniel approached the evidence table as if selecting instruments. During discovery, we identified 3 unauthorized transfers from corporate accounts, he said, totaling $847,000. The number echoed through the courtroom. Lena's face drained of color. These funds, Daniel continued, were used to finance Ms. Carter's legal action against her father. There was no board approval. No documentation. No authorization. Bank statements filled the courtroom screens. Dates. Amounts. Recipient accounts. This constitutes embezzlement of corporate funds, Daniel said evenly. Cole's voice rose. These claims are desperate attempts at discrediting. Desperate? Daniel replied coldly. These are bank records. Mathematics does not lie. He turned toward Lena. She looked suddenly smaller. Trapped. And there is more, Daniel said. We have evidence of witness tampering. Cole's composure shattered. That is absurd. Ms. Cole coached her client's testimony, Daniel said. Provided scripted phrasing, emotional cues, strategic answers. We have recordings. Judge Harrison leaned forward. Recordings? Office security footage, Daniel said. Audio enabled. Your Honor, Ms. Cole's preparation sessions were inadvertently captured during routine building security sweeps. The judge's expression darkened. I want those recordings reviewed immediately, he said. When it was my turn to testify, I stood without hesitation. Calm. Grounded. Mr. Carter, Daniel began formally. How long have you led North Star Dynamics? 30 years, I said. I founded the company in 1995 with $50,000 borrowed against my home. Current annual revenue is $247 million. Net profit is $29.6 million. We employ 1,400 people. Have you ever been declared incompetent by a medical professional? No. I completed comprehensive evaluations last month. Cognitive testing. Psychological assessment. Full physical examination. All results were normal for my age. Daniel submitted the reports. 3 independent physicians. Clean assessments. In your opinion, he asked, why is your daughter pursuing this action? I looked at Lena. She stared at her hands. She believes I prioritize company culture over maximum profit, I said. She wants automation and cost reductions that would eliminate jobs and reduce benefits. Is profit maximization always the correct strategy? No, I said. Sustainable success requires balance, profitability, employee stability, customer trust, and community responsibility. And how has that approach affected performance? We have delivered consistent growth for 30 years, I said. Employee retention exceeds industry norms. Customer satisfaction remains in the 95th percentile. I paused. I know every number. Every employee. Every decision. My daughter is willing to trade long-term stability for short-term gains. Cole's cross-examination was frantic. Mr. Carter, she snapped, is it not true you resist modernization? I resist reckless change, I replied. Technology should serve business goals, not replace them. Your daughter claims you are emotionally unstable. My daughter is young, I said calmly, and impatient. The courtroom was silent, and for the first time, I knew the tide had turned. She confuses passion with instability, conviction with stubbornness. She says I make decisions based on sentiment, while she claims she makes decisions based on experience. What she ignores is that experience is exactly what 30 years of building something durable looks like. Marianne Cole kept pressing, but her attacks were no longer landing. Her questions skimmed the surface while the evidence beneath her case collapsed. Lena had pushed too hard, too fast, and the structure she built could not support the weight of scrutiny. When Mark Ellis was called back to the stand, the confidence he had displayed earlier was gone. I may have been overly optimistic about the projected returns, he admitted, shifting in his seat. Daniel did not hesitate. Are you still supporting Ms. Carter's bid for leadership? The pause felt endless. I am reconsidering my position, Ellis finally said. Cole's closing argument rang hollow. Despite these allegations, she insisted, the core issue remains Mr. Carter's resistance to necessary modernization. Daniel stood immediately. The real issue, he said calmly, is whether a daughter can steal her father's company through deception, embezzlement, and witness tampering. Judge Harrison's expression hardened into stone. Order in the court. He leaned forward slightly. Given the seriousness of the financial misconduct presented, along with credible allegations of ethical violations, this court requires additional review. Lena finally looked at me. Her eyes, so much like Ruth's, were filled with fear and confusion. The court will reconvene in 1 week for a final ruling. As the room emptied, Lena approached slowly. Dad. For a moment, she looked like the little girl who once begged for bedtime stories. I never meant for it to go this far, she said quietly. But it did, I replied. It did, sweetheart. She turned and walked away with her dismantled legal team, leaving me alone with the wreckage of our family. All rise for the Honorable Judge Harrison. The courtroom stood as one. Shareholders, attorneys, family members who now felt like strangers. I felt Steve's steady presence beside me as the judge entered, carrying the full weight of decision. Please be seated. The silence was complete. Months of family warfare narrowed into a single breath. In the matter of Carter versus North Star Dynamics Incorporated, Judge Harrison said, the court has reached its decision. My heart pounded. After reviewing all evidence, testimony, and documentation, the court finds no grounds to declare Mr. Carter incompetent to manage his business affairs. Relief washed through me, warm and immediate, and somehow empty. Furthermore, the judge continued, the evidence of financial irregularities and potential witness tampering raises serious concerns regarding the plaintiff's conduct. Lena's shoulders sagged. The fight drained out of her completely. This case is dismissed. Mr. Carter retains full control of North Star Dynamics. Steve leaned toward me. Justice prevailed. But justice felt cold when it required dismantling your own child. Daniel shook my hand professionally. Congratulations. Your competence has been legally affirmed. Vindicated. The word tasted bitter. Across the aisle, Mark Ellis was already moving toward us. Mr. Carter, he said smoothly, you have my full confidence moving forward. Yesterday he had backed Lena's revolution. Today he was loyal again. Of course, I replied. Business as usual. Marianne Cole gathered her papers with mechanical precision. Her career had taken a serious blow. Lena remained seated, staring at her hands. The courtroom began to empty. Reporters whispered. Shareholders recalculated. Life resumed for everyone else. I could not move. Steve touched my arm. You did what you had to do. Did I? I asked. Or did I just prove her right about my priorities? You protected what we built, he said. What matters? The company was secure. My reputation intact. Everything preserved, except my relationship with my daughter. Lena finally stood, gathering her purse. Nathan waited by the doors, relief obvious on his face. The ordeal was over for him. She looked small. Defeated. I made a decision that surprised even me. Lena. She turned. Her eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted of tears. Dad. This does not have to be the end of our story. Something flickered across her face, hope tangled with fear. I lost everything, she said. No, I replied. You lost the battle, not your future. Steve watched carefully. Daniel pretended to sort documents while listening. Can we talk privately? I asked. Lena glanced at Nathan. He nodded encouragement. Not here, she said. Coffee. Somewhere neutral. I need time. Of course, I said, stepping closer. But remember this. You are still my daughter. You are still brilliant. You are still capable of extraordinary things. Her composure cracked. Even after everything I did? Especially after everything you did, I said. It takes courage to challenge me, even if the method was wrong. She looked at me with Rue's eyes still hurt, still searching. I will call you next week, she said. It was not much, but it was a beginning. As she walked away with Nathan, I felt something unexpected. Not victory. Not vindication. Hope. 10 days later, I sat on a bench overlooking Lake Union. The water shimmered in the late afternoon sun, Seattle's skyline rising behind the trees like quiet promises. I had arrived early. This conversation mattered more than any courtroom outcome. Lena appeared at 3:15, walking slowly across the grass. She wore jeans and a simple sweater. No business armor. No defensive posture. Just my daughter. Dad, she said, sitting beside me, keeping careful distance. Thank you for coming. I always will, I replied. I have been thinking about what you said at the courthouse. The lake lapped gently against the shore. Joggers passed. Life moved forward while we tried to rebuild ours. Dad, she said softly, I never felt like you were proud of me. The words struck harder than any legal accusation. Lena, I said, my voice tight. Every achievement of yours mattered to me, even when I failed to show it. She stared at the water. I spent my life trying to prove myself, she said. And it always felt invisible. I turned toward her fully. You were never invisible to me, I said. I just spoke love in the wrong language. She did not answer right away. But she did not get up and walk away. And for the first time since this war began, that felt like everything. Every accomplishment always seemed to fade beneath the shadow of the next board meeting. I turned fully toward her on the bench. I was always proud of you, I said quietly. I just never learned how to show it. Your mother tried to explain that to me. She told me I needed words, not just opportunities. Ruth's voice echoed across the years, as clear as if she were sitting beside us. She needs your attention more than the company does. Your mother was wiser than I ever gave her credit for. I thought I had to prove I was worthy of your love, I admitted. My love never needed proof, Lena said softly. It was unconditional. Then she laughed, brittle and wounded. Then why did it feel so conditional? Why did every conversation turn into work? Why was the company always more important than me? I stared out at the water, watching sailboats drift toward the harbor. How do you explain 3 decades of misplaced priorities? I built North Star Dynamics for you, I said. For our family's future. Every late night, every missed dinner, every sacrifice, I believed I was providing security. But you were also creating distance, she said. Yes, I replied. I was. Saying it felt like finally exhaling after holding my breath for years. I confused providing with parenting, I said. I confused success with love. Lena's eyes filled. I needed my father, she said. Not a benefactor. And I needed to learn the difference, I said. The silence that followed was different now. Honest. Unafraid. When I filed that lawsuit, she said, I was not just fighting for the company. I was fighting to matter to you. You have always mattered, I said. I just showed it badly. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I almost destroyed everything. No, I said gently. You nearly saved us. She looked at me startled. How can you say that? You forced honesty, I said. You made us confront what was broken. The lake reflected slow-moving clouds. Late spring in Seattle felt full of second chances. What happens now? She asked. That depends, I said. Do you still want to modernize the company? You would trust me with that? I am ready to trust you with the future of it. Her breath caught. I am talking about shared leadership. I continued. Your innovation. My experience. Partnership instead of war. She stared at me, searching my face. You would do that after everything? Because of everything, I said. You were right about modernization. I was right about culture. Together, we could build something your mother would be proud of. Lena stood and walked to the edge of the water, pacing as she thought. I recognized Ruth's quiet deliberation in her movements. Full partnership, she said slowly. Equal authority. Shared responsibility. Yes. She turned back toward me. What about the board? Steve already supports this, I said. The shareholders want stability and growth. We can give them both. And the employees? They will respect the North Star name, I said. Both of us. She returned and sat closer than before. I have conditions, she said. Name them. Complete transparency. No unilateral decisions. Modern technology implementation. Employee profit sharing. Agreed, I said immediately. My conditions are preserving company culture, gradual change instead of disruption, and protected family time. She smiled faintly. Weekly dinners, I added. No business talk during Emily's bedtime stories. And your mother's foundation continues. Her smile widened for the first time in months. Deal. I held out my hand. Partners? She took it firmly. Partners. Then she surprised me by leaning forward and hugging me tightly. I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart, I said. I always have. We stood together by Lake Union as the afternoon faded, father and daughter becoming something new, family, partners, future. That evening, the kitchen smelled like Ruth's favorite recipe. Lena moved between the stove and counter with familiar confidence, but the energy was different now. Lighter. Dad, she said, I made your favorite. I arrived carrying a wrapped package and a smile I had not worn in years. Something smells like your mother's cooking, I said. Same recipe, she replied. Same love. The table was set with care, candles, good china, attention reserved for milestones. Emily burst into the room wearing a paint-splattered dress. Grandpa! Emily, I said, kneeling. I brought you something special. She tore into the wrapping with pure enthusiasm, revealing a tiny business suit. For when you are ready to run North Star Dynamics, I said. She giggled, holding the jacket up to herself. Will I be the boss? Someday, I said. You just might. Nathan stepped out from his office, architectural plans under his arm. I am glad we are a family again, he said. So am I replied, and I meant it. Dinner unfolded easily. Emily talked about preschool. Nathan described a children's museum project downtown. Lena shared early ideas for modernizing North Star, carefully paced, respectful of the people who built it. The best of both worlds, I said. After dessert, Lena brought out a folder. Ready to make it official? She asked. The partnership agreement was simple and elegant. Shared authority. Complementary roles. Clear dispute resolution. Everything two stubborn leaders needed to work together. Emily watched us closely. Grandpa, she asked, are you not sad anymore? I knelt beside her. No, sweetheart, I said. Grandpa is happy because Mommy and Grandpa are friends again. Because we are family again, Lena added. I signed first. Lena followed, her signature confident and sure. Nathan pulled champagne from the refrigerator. I thought this deserved celebrating. We raised our glasses in the dining room. To North Star's new future, Lena said. To family partnerships, I added. And to not fighting anymore. Emily lifted her apple juice solemnly. We laughed and clinked carefully so she could join. Nathan raised his glass higher. To Ruth, he said. She would have loved this moment. To Ruth, we echoed. I felt her presence everywhere, in Lena's smile, in Emily's laughter, in the quiet certainty that healing, at last, had begun. The champagne tasted like hope. What happens Monday? Emily asked, peering up at us with serious curiosity. Monday, Lena said gently. Mommy and Grandpa go to work together. Like a team? Emily pressed. Exactly like a team. I lifted her into my arms and spun her carefully until she squealed with laughter. The best team in Seattle, I said. Outside, summer was beginning to settle in. Longer days. Warmer nights. A sense of possibility hanging in the air. Inside the house, we were beginning to, not as the family we had been before the war, but as something better. Something honest. As the evening stretched on, we drifted into the living room. Emily proudly spread out her newest drawings across the floor. Lena and Nathan quietly compared schedules for the coming week, coordinating school drop-offs and meetings with an ease that felt hard-earned. Simple moments. Ordinary moments. After months of court filings and whispered strategy, they felt almost sacred. By 8:30 I stood to leave, my arms filled with Emily's artwork and my chest filled with something lighter than it had been in years. See you Monday, partner, Lena said, smiling at me. See you Monday, daughter, I replied. The drive home took me through streets I knew by heart. Past North Star Tower. Past the courthouse where we had nearly lost everything. Past Pike Place Market, where truth had first begun to surface. Each landmark felt less like a reminder of pain and more like a mile marker pointing forward. Toward partnership. Toward family. Toward the future Ruth had always believed we could reach. I pulled into my driveway in Capitol Hill and sat in the quiet for a moment before going inside. I unfolded one of Emily's drawings. Stick figures labeled Grandpa and Mommy, seated at oversized desks, smiling at each other. A 4-year-old's blueprint for harmony. The perfect business plan.